All right, Fresh. Let's go to our game of the week. It's a rematch from last year, one of the best games in week number 2 last year. 7 p.m. on ESPN. The Texas Longhorns will travel to Alabama and Tuscaloosa to face the Crimson Tide. At the time of record, Crimson Tide are 7-point favorite in this game, over under at 56 points. This is a big time game for both teams. Both teams need this win. Texas needs this win to show off that they are truly back, that their Longhorns need to be taken seriously. If they lose this game, it's going to be, yeah, great. You're going to be able to win the Big 12. You have a lot of talent there, but you're not ready next year for the SEC. Alabama needs this game. You lose to Texas, it's not going to take you out of the playoff race, but it's very early on for Nick Saban to start taking L's here. Fresh, I'm excited for Jalen Milroe. Roydell Williams needs to be a little bit better. Jace McClendon looked okay, but I feel like he needs to be a little bit better. This is a game. Is Alabama's defense, though, is where I'm going to have the question. Alabama's defense, guys, it goes without saying, it's going to be a really good defense. A really, really good defense. A defense that 98% of the teams across the country will take. But is it a really, really good defense, or is it the championship elite level defense that we've gotten used to having in Tuscaloosa? Fresh, I'll turn it over to you. How are you seeing Texas versus Alabama?
Well, first off, Seth, Texas and Alabama have been playing college football for a long time, right?
Right.
This is the first time ever that these two schools have met in the regular season and both teams are ranked. And they've played
Wow.
quite a few times. This is also Quinn Ewers' first true road game. I'm not saying a trip to TCU is a real road game, or a trip to Baylor, or a trip to Kansas or Kansas State. No disrespect to those programs, but that's not Bryant-Denny Stadium. Those pale in comparison to the environment he's walking into. He didn't get any playing time when he was at Ohio State on any big road games. He hasn't done it at Texas yet. The biggest environment was either at Texas at a home game or playing in the Red River Shootout. This is going to be a whole nother test for him, and that probably for most of the football team. If anyone was around 2 years ago when they went to Arkansas, that was a big road game, but still not the same as what they're walking into on Saturday night. How does he manage the noise, the distractions, the whatever intimidations Alabama fans might bring, and keep focused on the task at hand and winning the game and keeping the down and distance manageable? That's what I want to see. If Quinn Ewers could do that, it'll show that he's truly matured as a quarterback, because we've seen him put up tons of stats at home, and they had laid a clunker in the bowl game, but going into Bryant-Denny, can he manage his emotions and be focused? Can Steve Sarkisian be focused in this environment? The last time he was in that stadium, he was coaching Mac Jones in that 2020 offense and putting up tons of points. How does he manage his emotions and be able to manage his team's expectations to be successful on Saturday? Those two guys are the key to the Longhorns. Now, you mentioned the secondary in the Alabama defense. At time of record, that Alabama defensive secondary has a few guys who are a little dinged up. There's no reports of who's out or who's playing, but there's reports that there's a bunch of guys who have some nicks and some dings. And are they going to be truly healthy to run and play a full game? It's going to really count on freshman Caleb Downs and Kool-Aid McKinstry. The two of them, I think, are fully fine, but they're going to have to pick up the slack for other guys who may be new to the rotation, or other guys who might not be playing 100%. How do they adapt and play at a high level to shut down this high-level passing attack? Because they're going to have to go against Xavier Worthy, Jordan Whittington, Jatavian Sanders, and A.D. Mitchell. That's a pretty good list of playmakers that Texas is bringing in with a pretty quality quarterback. Can that secondary and that back end, can they play in space? Can they shut down? Can they match up? Can they get off the field? Can the linebackers cover some backs in space? How does Alabama defense show up in their first true test? They lost a lot. Will Anderson's not there to save the day. Dallas Turner, you've got to show up now as the big man. You've got to start making plays. This is going to come on that defense. Are you ready to accept that challenge? This is going to be something right now on Nick Saban, changing coordinators. How have you prepared and gotten these guys ready to play? Where's the depth of this Alabama defense? They recruit really well. They bring in kids in the portal. Nick Saban is a genius. Can you put it all together, get these guys to be prepared to play in this football game? They looked great versus Middle Tennessee State last week. How does that transition to Saturday night? On the other side of the football for Alabama, Milroe. There was a quarterback battle all year long, all summer, off season long. He's the first Alabama quarterback ever to throw 3 touchdowns and run for 2 in a game. Let that sink in, folks. There's a tons of kids. Joe Namath out the top back in the day. He didn't even do it. Milroe did this. The kid has mobility. If he plays with confidence and playmakers show up for him, he has a chance. He had some confidence issues last year. It came a little too fast. He was putting it on the field way too fast because of Bryant, because of Young's injuries. So he's thrust into the situation. Now he's had a whole offseason to prepare. Can continue to grow and become a better quarterback and understand how to distribute to the running backs, receivers, tight ends, and manage the offense and use his athletic ability. If he can and get comfortable that way, he could actually blossom and to become a much better player than we all thought we saw last year, where he kind of looked a little lost. He's grown. I think they coached him up. How does he play with the big lights now? I want to see how that happens on Saturday night. One of the other factors we're really talking about is that last season, this game was played at 11 a.m. local time in about 1,000 degrees in Austin, Texas on Fox. It was hot as heck. Players were exhausted. There was cramps. They were worn out. This game's at 7 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Central Time. It's going to be a little cooler, not 95,000 degrees. That's going to be a little extra factor of who's going to be more hydrated, but not with the sun beating down on you. That home field advantage they had in Austin is now being flipped with being a night game in Bryant-Denny. And how does that change the narrative in this football game? Because Texas played their butts off last year, and they should have had the upset if it wasn't for Quinn Ewers getting knocked out. They got lucky. They owned the line of scrimmage. That's one of the rare times you can say that an opponent has ruled the line of scrimmage against Alabama. But Evan wore down. Will Anderson took over, and Bryce Young was able to scramble around and get it done late in the fourth quarter and find a way to win. How does Texas respond when you don't have that extra, momentum on your side from being at home? How do you adapt and take it to Alabama on the road and become that road warrior football team? If you want to be a playoff team, if you want to be a conference champion team, if you want to go and try to compete, this is your first test. If you could do this, you've shown you're there. If not, you're just another team that was back or may be back or could be back. This is your chance to be back by beating Alabama and beating them in their own house. So it's one thing about if you upset them in Austin, there's nothing going to Bryant-Denny and getting the W. You have the squad. You've recruited at a high level. Can you actually put the pen to paper and get it done on Saturday night? I've gone back and forth on this game for like 2.5 days, maybe even 2.5 months, all offseason. I don't know who's going to win. I do know that with that over-under being at 56, that is going to be in danger. And actually, I feel much more comfortable taking the under because I think both defenses are going to play at a high level. And with that, I'm going to say we're going to take the under. It's not hitting 56 points. This is going to be an old school, slug it out defensive football game. And whichever quarterback makes the first mistake might make the only mistake and cost themselves a win. With that said, Nick Saban, I'm not betting against him. I can't bet against him. I can't bet against Bryant-Denny. I can't bet against the night game there. It's just too much. I think Alabama wins 24-20. It's going to be a classic, but Nick Saban's going to show that Alabama has not left and they are still here to be reckoned with.
Fresh, I'm with you on that one. I'm not picking against Saban. Texas, you have to prove it to me. You have to prove it to me. And it's not to knock any of your players. It's not to say anything that you're not talented. It's not saying that you don't have the talent to match up with Alabama. I think you do. You have a lot of really good players on that team. I'm intrigued to see how Alabama handles Davion Sanders there, the tight end. I think he creates a huge matchup advantage for the Longhorns in this game. If I expect him to have a really, really big game with him and Ewers. I think Ewers will find him a few times, probably maybe a score or two out of him. Xavier Worthy looked real good last week versus Rice. And the same thing, watch out for sophomore Ethan Burke. Had a huge game versus Rice, the defensive end. If he can get after Milroe, then I think Texas has really got a shot at this. But you're right. You went back to Fresh. You talked about Kool-Aid. You talked about Dallas Turner. Alabama's defensive stars need to play like stars. They need to play like superstars. They need to take over this game. That 7 number is where I'm struggling with. I'm picking Alabama to win this game. if that spread was 6.5, I might be willing to take it at the 7. I think the 7 number is like right where it's gonna be. I got Alabama at like a 27-20 game as well. I think the under is going to come in. I really would rather stay under that 56 number. But I got Alabama winning this game. I think it's Texas needs to win this game, and that's what makes them really, really dangerous. And if they can go into Bryant Denny and pull off this upset, and it's going to be a huge upset, and no matter what happens in the Nebraska Colorado game with what we've been talking about and all week long with Coach Prime and everything, can you imagine, like, NFL be damned? Like, there's not going to be like a week 1 in the NFL if Texas upsets Alabama in Alabama. Like, the whole world starts talking about Texas. They say everything is bigger in Texas, and that's going to mean media coverage as well, because that will be the talk of the town going into Monday morning. You're going to need a really special opening NFL weekend for that talk to dwarf what the talk would be like if Texas pulls off the upset. I'm not saying it's happening. I give them about a 35% chance to win this football game. I got the Tide just because I'm going with Nick Saban, and it's very difficult for one of Saban's assistants to beat him. Doesn't happen very often. So I'm going Alabama, but I think this is going to be a great game. I think it's going to be really, really tight this week.
It kind of feels like, the Florida State LSU game where we want to see Florida State prove it. Like we had seen the hype, but
Right.
prove it. And they came out and they proved it. Now it's kind of, all right, Texas, your chance. There's a lot of hype. There always is. Prove it. This is the biggest stage. This isn't beating Rice. This is not beating Houston. It's not beating Baylor. This is beating Alabama at Alabama. If you could do that, then people will believe um, that you are on the track to being back. So there's a lot more hanging in the balance here. And, I don't have Alabama covering. I got a feeling this is still going to be a clunker. And it's funny where, good teams, win, great teams cover. That might be an onage there where Alabama might actually win, but they might not cover.